They say secrets always come to light, but nobody warns you what it feels like when the truth finally lands in your hands. The afternoon it happened, the sky outside my kitchen window was the color of old denim, soft, worn, and hiding a storm that hadn't decided whether to fall or keep its tears to itself. I wiped my palms on my apron, feeling that strange heaviness in the air, the kind that tells you life is about to shift in a direction you never planned. I wasn't looking for anything. That's what still haunts me. I was only dusting the bookshelf, humming the same old gospel hymn my husband loved. His Bible, black leather, edges worn smooth by years of prayer, was lying there, like it always did, but something felt different, like it was quietly calling me, tugging at some corner of my heart I didn't know was still open. I picked it up, meaning only to clean beneath it. But when I opened it, a small folded paper slipped out and drifted to the floor like a dying leaf. A note. Old. Yellowed. And written in my husband's unmistakable handwriting. My pulse jumped. I knelt down, feeling my knees protest, and picked it up with trembling fingers. For a second, I just stared, fighting the urge to unfold it. Why was it hidden? Why wasn't it inside an envelope? Why had he never mentioned it? And then, with a breath I didn't realize I was holding, I opened it. The words hit me so hard, I had to sit down. If anything happens to me, tell her the truth. Tell her I never meant to leave. Tell her she was the love God sent when I didn't deserve one. Below it, a name. A woman's name I had never seen before. My heart dropped so fast, I thought the room tilted. I read it again, as if repetition would magically rearrange the letters into something harmless. But they stayed the same. Every line was a quiet explosion. My husband, my steady, faithful, God-fearing husband, had written this message for another woman long before he met me. And yet, I couldn't shake what came next. At the bottom, in smaller handwriting, almost like he'd hesitated before writing it, were the words, "One day, I hope she forgives me." Forgive him? For what? My hands were cold, my breath tight. Suddenly, the kitchen I'd lived in for 40 years felt unfamiliar, like I had stepped into someone else's home, someone else's life. The clock ticked too loudly. The refrigerator hummed like it was whispering secrets I wasn't supposed to hear. I folded the note carefully, as though it were something fragile that might crumble into dust, and placed it on the table. I sat there staring at it, trying to make sense of the impossible. Was my entire marriage built on a story I never knew? Before I could think any deeper, I heard the sound. A soft knock on the front door. I froze. Nobody ever visited unannounced. Not at my age. Not in this quiet neighborhood where even the mailman walked slow. The knock came again. Gentle, uncertain, almost familiar. I pushed myself up, one unsteady breath at a time, my heart pounding like a guilty drum. When I opened the door, there stood a young woman, mid-20s maybe, her hair damp from the misty air, her eyes wide and strangely hopeful. And in her hands, she held the exact same Bible as my husband's. "I think," she whispered, voice trembling, "I knew your mother." My fingers tightened on the doorknob. The world suddenly felt too bright, too sharp. "My mother kept a note," she continued, her eyes filling with emotion, "and it has your husband's name written on it." My throat went dry. She lifted the Bible slightly, almost like an offering. "Please," she said softly, "I came because she said you might be finally ready to know the truth." I gripped the edge of the doorframe because for a moment I wasn't sure my legs would hold me. The young woman shifted her weight, her nerves as visible as the raindrops clinging to her lashes. I opened the door wider and motioned her inside, my voice barely working. "Come in, sweetheart." She stepped over the threshold carefully, as if the house might reject her. The smell of rain followed her in, mingling with the faint scent of cinnamon I'd left simmering on the stove. She looked around, slowly, quietly, the way people do when they're entering a place they've heard stories about their whole lives, but never thought they'd see. I gestured to the table where the note lay like a piece of broken truth. Neither of us was ready to touch again. She stared at it, and something in her expression softened, like she recognized it immediately. "That handwriting," she whispered. "It's the same." I swallowed hard, my throat thick with questions I'd held down for decades. "Sit, dear, please." She slid into the chair across from mine, placing her Bible gently on the table. It looked older than she was. Corners frayed, leather faded, little pressed flowers tucked between pages, like fragile bookmarks of someone's past. She opened it slowly and pulled out a folded paper that looked heartbreakingly familiar. My breath caught. She placed it beside my husband's note, the two of them lying side by side, like long-lost confessions finally reunited. "This is the one my mother kept," she said quietly. She didn't tell me much. She only said it wasn't my place to judge, that love makes people brave in ways the world may never understand. But last month, before her voice wavered, she pressed her lips together. "Before she passed, she told me to find you." I felt my heart twist. "I'm so sorry, honey." She nodded, eyes glistening but steady. "Thank you." A long silence stretched between us, filled only by the ticking of the wall clock. We were two strangers, linked by a man we both loved in different lifetimes. Not rivals, not enemies, just pieces of a story finally finding their rightful place. Finally, I asked, "What did your mother tell you about him?" The young woman brushed her thumb over the edge of her Bible, drawing strength from the feel of it. "She told me she knew a man once, a good man, a broken man, someone who wanted to do right but didn't know how to climb out of the mess life had buried him in. She told me he was the first person who ever made her believe she deserved to be treated kindly." A tremor went through me. She continued, voice soft. "She said he left suddenly. No goodbye, no explanation, just disappeared. But she never hated him for it. She believed some people leave because they're running from their past, and some people leave because they're trying to protect someone from it. She believed your husband was the second kind." My breath shook as it left me. Protect someone? From what? The young woman hesitated, eyes drifting to the two notes. She said my husband had a family, responsibilities, a life built long before he ever met me, and he carried guilt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He said he wasn't free to love her the way she deserved. A cold wave washed through me. "He told her that?" My voice barely came out. She nodded. "She didn't blame you. She didn't even know who you were. She said he talked about his wife with such respect, like she was the one steady thing he had ever had." She paused. "She said he left her because he was afraid one day she'd come to hate him if she knew the truth." I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to hold myself together. My husband never spoke of another woman, never hinted at a past that never etched clean. And all these years, he had carried this alone? My gaze dropped to the note he wrote, the one I had found, the one that said, "Tell her the truth." My hands trembled as I ran my fingertips across the faded ink. He never gave it to me. He never found the moment. Or maybe he never found the courage. "What about the name?" she whispered. "The one on the note." The young woman looked down, her eyes pooling again. "That was my mother's sister, her twin." She took a careful breath. "My mother said he knew her sister first, before everything fell apart in his life, before he disappeared. The note he left wasn't for her. It was for her sister, but she never got to read it. Confusion twisted inside me like a knot. She she passed away unexpectedly, the young woman said, and my mother kept the note because she believed it belonged to the story, even if the ending was never written the way it was meant to be. She wiped a tear. She said your husband never knew. He left thinking he still had a chance to make things right. I stared at the two notes again, and suddenly they didn't look like evidence of betrayal. They looked like evidence of heartbreak, of unfinished forgiveness, of a man who tried to bury a past he never fully escaped. My voice felt small when I asked, "Why now? Why did your mother want you to bring this to me?"
The young woman inhaled slowly, as if gathering every bit of courage left inside her. She said, "Because you deserve to know," she whispered, "and because there's something else she wanted you to have." She reached into her bag and pulled out a sealed envelope, white, crisp, unyellowed, far newer than the notes on the table. My heart thudded painfully. "She wrote this for you," the young woman said, placing it gently in front of me. She said only you would understand why. I stared at the envelope, my hands hovering above it, afraid to touch it, afraid not to. The young woman's voice softened. She said, "This might help you forgive him or help you forgive yourself." My breath trembled as my fingertips brushed the envelope flap. And then I froze, realizing something was written on the front in delicate handwriting. My name, spelled perfectly, as if she had practiced it many times before. I stared at my name written in those delicate looping letters, and for a moment the entire room felt suspended, like time itself had paused to witness what came next. My fingers hovered over the envelope, trembling with a mix of fear and a strange, aching curiosity. The young woman across from me didn't rush me. She simply folded her hands and waited, as if she knew this was a moment I couldn't be pushed through. When I finally opened it, the paper inside felt soft, worn at the edges, like someone had held it many times before, deciding they were ready to let it go. I unfolded it carefully, and the first sentence struck me like a warm, painful whisper. "If you're reading this, it means my time has run its course, and I need you to know the truth I couldn't speak out loud." The handwriting was elegant, deliberate, the kind of script someone uses when they're writing something sacred. I blinked against the sting in my eyes and kept reading. "I don't know your name, but I know your heart. I know it because the man who loved you spoke of you with reverence. He called you the anchor God gave him when he had nothing steady left inside." My heart cut. I gripped the letter tighter as the young woman watched me with quiet understanding. She never wanted to be a shadow in your marriage. She never wanted to be the wound he carried. But he never meant to hurt me, and he never meant to hide from you. He was a man torn between guilt and grace, running from a past he didn't know how to confess. A tear slid down my cheek before I even realized it had escaped. He left my sister because he believed she deserved more than a man with secrets. And after she passed, he left me because he couldn't bear the weight of another goodbye. He didn't betray you. He didn't choose us over you. He simply didn't know how to choose himself. The room felt still, too still. I kept reading. Before he died, he said something I never forgot. He said, "My wife saved me, not from the world, but from myself. If she ever learns my past, I hope she remembers the man I became with her, not the man I was before." My chest tightened. A sob built in my throat, but I forced myself to keep steady. I owed him that much. You were his redemption. You were his peace.
And I needed you to know it wasn't your love that failed him, it was his fear. The words swam before my eyes. I pressed the back of my hand to my mouth, trying to quiet the storm rising inside me. Forgive him if you can. And if you can't, forgive yourself. None of us were perfect in this story. We were simply trying to love with the broken pieces we'd been given. At the bottom, her signature curled like a final sigh. I lowered the letter slowly, unable to speak. It felt like a truth years in the making had finally exhaled, filling the room with something fragile and devastatingly human. The young woman broke the silence first. She didn't want you to carry anger. She said anger keeps us chained to the past. But truth sets us free to love what we had, even if it wasn't perfect. I closed my eyes. For the first time since finding the note in my husband's Bible, I felt something shift inside me. Not closure, not forgiveness yet, but understanding. A door inside me loosened on its hinges, letting in a breath of air I didn't realize I'd been suffocating without. I opened my eyes and looked at the young woman. She had her mother's quiet grace. I could see it now. The softness, the bravery required to walk into a stranger's home carrying the weight of another person's truth. "Honey," I whispered, "your mother must have been a remarkable woman." She smiled softly, tears balancing on her lashes. "She was. And she said your husband was a good man who made one mistake he never stopped regretting." A bittersweet warmth spread through me. My husband, my strong, gentle, quiet man, had never been the kind to speak of his pain. He carried things inside him like a locked drawer. And now I finally understood why. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. She startled slightly, then relaxed, gripping my fingers like she was afraid to let go. "You came all this way. For her. For him. For me." She said, "I couldn't keep it to myself. Some stories deserve an ending." A soft sound escaped me, half laughter, half grief. "And some," I said quietly, "deserve a new beginning." The clock ticked gently behind us. The house no longer felt heavy. The truth had taken up space where doubt used to sit, not to break me, but to free me. "I'd like to know more about her and about you." Her face lit with a hopeful kind of sorrow. "I'd like that too." We sat there for a long moment, two women connected by a man we had both cared for in different lifetimes. Not rivals, not enemies, just pieces of a story finally finding their rightful place. Then she looked down at her Bible again and whispered, "There's something else." My brows drew together. "More." She nodded. "My mother said she wasn't the only one who kept something. She said your husband left one last thing behind, something meant for you." My heart stuttered. "For me?" She reached into her bag again, slowly, carefully, and pulled out a small wooden box, old but polished, edges smoothed by time. She told my mother about this, said one day, when the truth finally found you, you'd know how to open it. She slid it gently toward me. The moment my fingers touched the lid, something familiar and electric shot through me, like a memory waking up after decades of sleep. And when I lifted it,